Welcome to Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD, the podcast that delves into the diverse and impactful roles scientists can play beyond the lab. With me, David Mendes. This week, I have with me friend of the show, past guest Matteo Tardelli. Now, Matteo is in a different chapter of his life than he was when he first came on the show. He's now a biomarker scientist, so working in biotech, and still takes to heart or has close to his heart the question of what happens to graduate students after they graduate. How can they have fulfilling careers? How can they access positions of leadership? Anyway, how can they get and give the most value from their degree? Matteo, super happy to have you here today. I'm just going to quickly tell your story, and then you're going to maybe fill in the blanks. But you've transitioned from academia to biotech, management consulting, medtech, and now you help other PhDs do the same by providing actionable steps and execution plans for their career development. Your work has been featured in publications such as Nature Careers, Chemistry World, The Biochemist, and Inside Higher Ed. And you've spoken on post-PhD career success at Ivy League institutions, and you've been invited as a panelist at career development conferences across the US and Europe. You're author of, like I mentioned, the Salmon Leap for PhDs, Swimming Upstream, a transition from academia to industry that you published in 2020. And now the latest one is Beyond Academia, Stories and Strategies for PhDs, Making the Leap to Industry. These are like important reading for anyone in the career development domain for scientists. The community is very grateful for you sharing all these reflections you've had. I'm happy to have you here today to be able to kind of give an update of what happened with your career journey since we talked, but also with your implication and your work within this context of career developments for young and not so young scientists.
Absolutely, David. Yeah. Thanks for the nice introduction as well. So back then when we spoke, I was in a transition just outside academia myself. I was in the US. I was, at the end of my second postdoc, and that was the time when I put together my first book, The Salmon Leap for PhDs, when I was kind of informing myself of what was out there. And then I felt like since 2020, I've been moving across like really kind of different industries myself as well. So first I tried a bit in biotech as a senior scientist, was still doing like kind of bench work. So it was pretty similar to what I was doing back during my PhD. Then wanted to like experience something else and went into kind of life science consulting. I've been doing that for quite a bit of time, but then understood that biotech was something that I was more passionate about. Just I didn't want to do that type of work, like bench work anymore, because I've been doing that over my PhD and a couple of postdocs afterwards. So I was like, what's the deal here? How can I really apply my consulting experience and my kind of experience in also presenting to external facing customers and things like that, and how can I then pack that into something that is actually of interest in biotech as well. And then my current job is really as a biomarker scientist role, and we actually it's a lot of like kind of customer facing kind of activities as well, in which I really try to understand the clinical trial needs of our customers, as well as presenting back, after analysis, the data set to, our customers and collaborators. So it's been like a transition from like the bench scientist to something that was like fully like consulting based, and then went back into something that was a little bit in between. So I think I found something that it's a little bit more like of interest to me, and is still like close to patients and close to the translational scientific aspect of things as well. So that's a little update in regards to my work situation right now. And while on the side, I really try still to kind of help PhDs to navigate this transition themselves. And over the past couple of years, I've been offering a few workshops to universities and institutions across Europe and US, as you mentioned. So quite a bit of that stuff and activities as well that I try to keep on the side and try to keep active as, I kind of just like it. It sounds like a bit weird perhaps, but it's just, a passion that someone just develops with time as well. And it's just, nice to help peers and colleagues that are going through the same kind of transition that I was in as well back in the day. So yeah, that's pretty much a little update about it, little life update. Yeah.
No, I totally understand. The same thing. Anytime I go speak to a group of students and then get their feedback, and then getting someone to tell me, meeting someone that says, "Oh, I've listened to this many episodes of the show, and they've really helped me in a moment of doubt." It's a very gratifying experience, and like you say, giving back to the community you came from is really, really. I have no trouble understanding why why you do it. Now, one thing people, listeners of the show and people who are in graduate school thinking about careers really appreciate is learning about job descriptions that they didn't know. Before we talked, I wasn't familiar with yours. Can you just for a few minutes, like a couple of minutes, tell us more in detail what is it that you do and how is it that your PhD profile fits into that? Because people are always want to know what are positions out there that I don't know of and that might be interesting for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very interesting, and it's I believe a kind of career path that got a little bit more popular in the last years. I think this was something that was not really existing, like let's say 10 years back while I was doing my PhD. And my role is really like it's a clinical and translational scientist kind of role. So it's a little bit kind of in between bench and bedside at the end of the day. So just to kind of explain a little bit of a day-to-day, it's of course we work in a matrix team. So different teams within different projects of the company will come to me, or I will go to them and offer my help or ask my expertise in a specific kind of problems they're facing. But essentially, kind of supports. The clinical trials kind of design. So let's say one kind of either academic collaborator or a biotech or a pharma company come to our company and say, hey, we want to check some biomarker of interest in the clinical space of some asthmatic patients, for instance. We will help them design the clinical trials, saying, for instance, we want a well-powered kind of number of patients here. So like, let's say, 40 healthy controls versus 40 patients with asthma. And then we basically we work with a specific device that is a GCMS kind of based device that checks biomarkers in breath, actually. So we send this device to the clinic, and the clinical site does all the things they need to do, all the sampling. It takes a little bit of time to recruit all the patients and things like that. So we kind of support them also along the way, really trying to understand their needs there. Once we receive all the samples back to our labs, we kind of run the the GCMS on this analytical technique that will really come out like you get a lot of compounds that are in these samples that can actually be measured by these analytical technique as well. So my role is really together with the teams, because there's a specific pipeline in which we identify these markers, we match the spectra with some libraries that we have internally or that are publicly available. this data set will then get passed into the biostatisticians that do their jobs and the magic, and then I'll get these data sets, and I'll look at, the significantly changed kind of biomarkers that we see, like in this specific cohort, and really try to make sense from a biological perspective and a clinical perspective, really looking at the study design, really looking at some different clinical metadata that we actually got from this specific site collaborators or other biotech or pharma company, and then basically present back to these customers and really try to make sense of the biology and the narrative behind that. Really, taking a kind of a holistic view on the clinical study design and the pathophysiology itself of the specific disease. So it's a little bit something, again, in the clinical translational science space, and really it's a bit across, working with different teams, but also kind of supporting different teams as well as presenting to, academics and other collaborators out there. So it's quite a bit of meetings, quite a bit of looking at that asset and really try to dive a little bit into the biology when you see like certain biomarkers going up or going down, and really like try to build a narrative that then is presented back to the customer as well. So it's a little bit like a mix of different kind of activities, but that could be very of interest, like to PhDs that have a bit of possibly biology background and want to work somewhere else that is not like bench work necessarily.
What I find interesting in it is, it does. First, it allows for someone like you who has multiple interests and who doesn't just want to be at the bench to, do some lab work. Let's say, I guess for you, it's more data analysis and like the data scientist type work, but also talk with the stakeholders, be it on the medical part or on the pharma part. The kind of science communication aspect in building that narrative that you said, and of course discussing it, etc. I find it super, super interesting. Plus, to me, it feels that other aspect that might be of interest, I imagine, to you, but of anyone who, and often you hear this, graduate students will say, I'd like to work in something where the effect or the result or the outcome of what I work on, I want it to be more, short, quicker to get there versus, 5-10 years, whatever. And here, you're coming with a client's question. You do what it takes, including mass spectrometry, etc., to crunch the data, and then you go into the data and see is there a story there to be told, and then eventually there's a decision on, okay, there's a biomarker that we can use here and there. So I think the time span of the result and the outcome is shorter, so there can be more gratification there, or fast gratification versus a academic context type research.
Yeah, and I think also working in the clinical space like gets you a little bit more of a real life kind of scenario as well, because you're working really with patient data as well. So you're like, well, it really feels like an impact on someone's health as well, like possibly down the line as well. So, and I think also the other point that I like, I guess, in comparison to something that is probably a little bit more consulting kind of oriented, you still get the time to do the deep dive if you want to into the science, while this is something that is not really happening if you're doing like just some external kind of life science consulting, because you simply don't have time to like crunch the data to depth. So it's a little bit of both side of things mixed in a kind of position as well.
Now, we've talked about both books that you've published, so Salmon Leap and Beyond Academia, and I'm really curious to know how you got to this position. How you learned about it? Was it a role that came out and that you saw a job posting? Was it something that came out in conversation with people? How did it work for you? You've been helping people. You've been, giving training about this. You've been writing about this. How do your books, let's say, align with your personal experience? Let's say.
Yeah, and also like job hunting myself, I really, it was really a tough time of my life as well, right? So also like by also knowing and these things, and also like in the past, like while writing my book, I could really expand my network and really connect with other people. Still, the kind of job searching phase wasn't that easy, because you kind of, again, in my experience, I really wanted to change fields again, and it's never easy to really jump from one side to the other. Well, when you get out of academia and you feel like, well, if I go to biotech and I'll do something very similar to what I'll do, and probably I'll stand a chance. And in fact, in my experience, it was really the case. It was kind of seamless to really transition to my postdoc to a position at the bench, while then coming back from consulting into then biotech as well. Again, it was a little bit like difficult to reinvent myself and kind of frame my experience in a way that were relevant for them. And I think I came across this position kind of randomly by a keyword search, really. So I didn't really know a lot of people within the company, but started to inform myself about it. And while I started, the first round of interviews as well. So I had a good feeling about it. So it was really good that I found that job, and really I could connect with people beforehand to really understand what it was like. But I think essentially my kind of customer facing kind of experience which I got in consulting, and possibly that's something that's pretty rare in our field, in terms of you find a lot of scientists that really great at their in their research kind of bubble, and you find a lot of I guess people that are really great in consulting and other things, or business development activities and stuff like that, but you don't find a mix of the two. So I felt like that back in the days, my employer was really looking, my current manager was really looking like over, like, looking at the blend of these two kind of, skills. So I think I was bringing that, and that kind of made me a very strong candidate for that. So it was a bit of a like random find. I was like kind of targeting a specific location, so it was kind of easy-ish to find things in that location. But it was, I actually got this job like really not through my network, as you would think, as people would think. It was just like a regular application that I took time for, and it was kind of successful, because I prepared for each round of interviews. And of course, the interview process was kind of long, and like meeting with the different stakeholders, and then interviewing with different stakeholders that were gonna be my colleagues then later on. But the job application itself was really like a standard one. Yeah.
Now, because what was the time frame when this happened? Just so we know.
It was, so I think I started applying. Let me think about it. Yeah, I started applying like in 2022, like at the end of 2022, like in December. Started to like go through a kind of screening interview that felt kind of long, because it was already 1 hour with 2 stakeholders. And I was like, wow, that's it feels like a waste of my time, because I'm not even sure if I'm really interested in this position anyway. But I kind of got a good feeling to like go through like this first screening with my manager then. So it was a good chat. And then afterwards, I think then it was like December, we had the Christmas break and stuff like that. And I think the first 20 days of January, it was like a couple of other rounds. And I believe like at the end of February, they invited me on site to just meet other stakeholders as well. And then the offer was finalized. So it took like all in all 3 months maybe, because it was more like, it was kind of difficult to find. There's always, time to kind of speak to everyone. And I think the process itself was like, probably 3 or 4 virtual meeting on Teams, and then afterwards it was just one day at the company site in which they kind of flew me in, and my interviews for one day, went for lunch with another stakeholders, and then just basically I drove back home.
Hi there. If you have questions and doubts about your professional future as a young scientist, as a PhD, you can now talk directly to me by joining the Beyond the Thesis community on School.com. If you go to skool.com/PapaPhD, you will find a safe space and a community of people like you figuring out their postgraduate school career journey. And you will have ample opportunity to talk with me directly and ask me your questions on live coffee time sessions and on weekly Q&As. Additionally, you will find courses and also have the opportunity of having one-on-one calls with me. So remember, skool.com/PapaPhD. See you soon. And would you say that in biotech it's a standard hiring kind of schedule procedure?
Yeah. So we've been, I've been myself hiring some new people really recently. So it is pretty much the same. So and it was kind of also tricky to find the right fit for a role that very similar to mine as well. So it goes through the initial screening with the hiring managers, and afterwards, basically out of many CVs, we selected a couple of people that were fitting the kind of the JD, and then they came on site, they gave a presentation, and basically they went through a full, very stressful day of interviews and presentations, and each interview was geared at understanding something different about the candidate. So for instance, I was more about leadership and managerial skills. Other two colleagues were thinking more about the technical aspects of things as well. Someone else was doing something else, and then all together we were grouped up, and this person was giving a presentation, and we were kind of asking questions, trying to understand also if this person was going to be a good fit for the work we do as well. So yeah, it's pretty much the same. So it was 2 or 3 virtual interviews, and then the best candidates came on site. But yeah, it took a little bit of time to go through all the applications and CVs.
Okay, so sorry, I'm really kind of hooked into this because it's a great window onto something people really don't get to hear too much about. Would you agree that this is kind of a hybrid between an academic job interview? Because you say people give presentations, and it's not often, I guess specifically because we're talking about biotech, we're talking about research, but outside university walls. That's probably why I'm getting this feeling. Do you agree with this kind of concept of it being a hybrid?
Yeah, I agree to that. I think first, in my example, I didn't really have to give a presentation on a paper. This time we decided to get the candidates to give a presentation because we really wanted to understand, their way to present, a specific papers that we all studied, so we really knew pretty well, but we kind of wanted to understand their ways of building together a presentation, and their way also to speculate a little bit further for let's say a customer kind of situation as well. So I can give you a little bit of an example. So I guess I think a candidate came through as very technical, and it was really amazing to hear that when it was possibly challenged on something else that possibly was a little bit more clinical. I guess it was a little bit difficult for them to answer that, while other kind of candidates were a little bit more kind of bigger picture and less technical, and we kind of needed at that time someone that understood the technicalities and wanted to get their hands dirty a little bit more rather than seeing the bigger picture. So we kind of we're kind of selecting a candidate according to that as well. So I think the presentation side apart, it was really important, of course, but yeah, also the conversations we had before were, really informative for us to really understand if the candidates were a good fit for the company as well.
I'll come back to this because it gives really interesting insights that people are and listeners and the community at large really wants to know about. But look, because we just talked about your hiring process, this was in the middle of your 2 books. So 2020, The Salmon Leap, Transition from Academia to Industry. 2023, Beyond Academia, Stories and Strategies for PhDs Making the Leap. Can you just share what this new book brings that adds to what you had shared on Salmon Leap, and maybe align it to what you've learned in the years in between? Because writing a book is an effort, it's an endeavor in itself, and I'm sure that if you wrote it, it's because either there's some update that you wanted to bring to Salmon Leap, or some new learnings on your side, or you're just adding something more that you hadn't covered on the first book. Can you talk a little bit about that and share what you're sharing with the community in this latest book of yours?
Sure. I think I wanted really to add, in comparison to the first book, Beyond Academia came out as a book that I was co-writing with other people. So I really went through so many interviews, more probably 60 interviews with different people that really made the transition to industry. And I just wanted to cover these stories in the book and really make it a little bit more insightful from that perspective, because I was kind of, distilling all these kind of lessons that I got from other people that were going, to government positions, as well as possibly non-profit, biotech, pharma, and other things. And I just wanted to really, kind of distill that in a kind of book and something that is actionable for people reading it. I also wanted to cover some a bit of a value clarification exercise at the beginning of the book itself, because I also found myself many times, especially in the job search, kind of applying for random things, really not understanding what I wanted next in my career, right? So I think many times, and that's something we might want to discuss later on, is something that I find very important, really to take a step back for yourself, trying to understand what's important in your life and in your career. Obviously, if you want to be location independent and you don't care so much possibly about the salary, but rather want to live a life on an island, maybe applying for a pharma job in a city is something that is not for you. And I think sometimes we get really dragged into these kind of scenarios in which we think that, just for the fame, just for how the title sounds, we just want to be part of something. But that doesn't really align with our life plans and our life aspirations as well. So that was something I wanted to cover a little bit at the beginning of the book, in addition to what I've been doing for the Salmon Leap. And this is something that I will be launching also on a workshop beginning of next year, because I feel New Year is something it's a nice moment to really step back and really reflect about it. But most of all, I really wanted to hear from other people that made this transition and really just put together some lessons for the readers as well. So it's much more comprehensive. It's a guide that really takes you through the transition itself, and really gives you some kind of strategies to really navigate that, because I feel again, we don't really learn a lot about it in academia. Many times our mentors didn't really do the transition themselves. So I would not expect them to, teach me or inform me on how to do that, because they just didn't do it themselves. And it's not something that I need to, blame my former mentors about, or things like that. But it's just, if you've been all your career in academia, fair enough if you don't know how to transition to, a consulting job or other things. And so, it wants to be a little bit of a tool that helps PhD students and postdoc navigate that. And as I said, the new guide is really very, very comprehensive on that. So just wanted to get a little bit deeper into that kind of topic.
So, and then this brings us to actually the title of today's conversation: how to uncover your core values. And I agree that this is something that in graduate school, unless you're really, kind of creative in the extracurricular things you do, you will not hear about this during graduate school. you, maybe on Instagram and on something will pop up on your feed from someone in the, I don't know, personal development space that's going to mention that, but it's not something that's going to feel very familiar, and it can even feel woo-woo, a bit how can I say? Yeah, a bit unsciency. And that's why I was really happy that you were available to talk today, because I think it is important. I think this, second book versus first book, I think it's a very important reflection that you had. And it's this question of, yes, you need to do all this external work in the world, but to eventually have a healthy career journey throughout, you sometimes need to do inner work. What do you have to share with us about, based on your experience? And again, you come from research, you're still very close to research. You're in this position that is in an intersection between different things, and research is one of them. So if you're saying that identifying and uncovering and taking stock of your core values is important, I think people listening can lend an ear to you and maybe allow themselves to think, okay, let's see what Matteo has to say about this, and let's see how I can apply it in my young researcher life.
Yeah, I can give you an example of my kind of career so far as well. When I first joined a consulting company as well, I didn't really understand what the everyday work was going to be about. So I clearly didn't do any value kind of clarification exercise there, right? So I don't really understand the role very well. I don't really understand if my life values really fit into that specific consulting industry at all. So I think once I found myself doing the job, I was like, well, this is not really aligning to what I wanna do in life and with my career in general as well. So I think this was something that got me to realize that I should have thought about it beforehand before really applying to that specific job and really trying to understand that a little bit more. Figuring that out afterwards was kind of important, and that's why it made my job search a little bit more difficult than before, because I was kind of more selective on what I wanted to do next, and I wanted to again be on the biotech side of things, but really trying to be more on the clinical and translational side. So there were possibly plenty of jobs in the senior scientist kind of preclinical kind of area, but I understood I didn't want that because I knew that, for instance, my partner is kind of fully remote. She's got her own company, and she's been like that for several years. And I felt if I were gonna take something like a bench base that was gonna be very location dependent, this was not gonna be good for our relationship. So it was many factors that came into play there, and trying to figure this out and trying to sit together also with your partner and trying to figure out what's the best career choice for me and for us. It was something not straightforward at the beginning. So yeah, I mean, definitely something to think about. And I caught myself many times getting trapped again into this thing. Okay, well, let's apply for this job, and I'll move over there because of this job, instead of again taking a step back and asking myself, where do you want to live? You want to live close to your family. You want to be, more available to your friends and things like that, rather than moving maybe somewhere completely random just for the sake of getting a job. And of course, I realized that's a very, privileged question here to ask myself. But if I could really, choose that location and my, kind of type of employment as well, this was going to be something different in comparison to what I was doing before as well. So I think in that phase of figuring out, and in the phase of being in between jobs and looking for something else, I think taking a step back, kind of discussing with colleagues and partners and things like that, I also took a course they actually recommend from the School of Life. They really offer courses. Also, like one of these is like a value kind of workshop that is out there. And it was really interesting. We went through it, and they asked us our childhood kind of activities and things like that. We were able to build a manifesto for ourselves that could kind of guide us in our job search as well. So it was a little bit of figuring out, getting out there, participate to some workshops and things that were kind of interesting for me at that time, before really applying to something that possibly felt again either random or where I wouldn't really feel that it would basically be a good fit for me job wise and life wise. So I think that was something that it was a good realization from my side, and that's something that I really recommend to others also to do a little bit.
So you've told us your values that were important to you and that you had to consider yourself and within your couple, etc., etc. But in your experience meeting and coaching other people and even interviewing people for your books, etc., what would you say are common kind of dead angles that people are often not considering and then understanding a little bit too late that they should have put that as a core value? Do you have any examples?
Yes, many times I really feel like the financial side of things and, these shiny things that many companies kind of offer, it gets people a little bit trapped. I understand, a good salary is something like that is very important to many people, but is that really your top value in your working life? That's a question that I guess many people need to ask themselves, including me. And that's what I felt like, other people were possibly not considering while moving between jobs as well, right? So I think, okay, yeah, you let's say that you rate the salary as a top value for you, but then again, what the values we were discussing before and things that are really relevant in your life, where do they sit then if you then take this top salary kind of value and you make it very relevant for you? So I think the salary side of things, I guess it was really something that get people a bit distracted on their career kind of journey as well, especially coming from academia. Many times you really feel like, oh wow, they're gonna pay me so much in industry and I just want to take this job and everything else just doesn't matter to me anymore. But then you figure out that possibly you maybe need to move in the middle of nowhere and you're like far away from your family or friends, and then it makes you unhappy, but your salary is then very good. So it's again like figuring out and grading like the different values in working life. I think it's just super important, and I've been seeing this with different professionals as well. It's always a little bit of a battle there to really understand what to put on top and what to prioritize in comparison to everything else as well.
So let's say, if you think of there's a lot of talk, in podcasts also, but in the social sciences and the self-improvement space about, the Maslow pyramid, or anyway, Maslow scale of what is important for us in our lives. So you said putting salary first may be and often is a mistake. What would you say are key core values that you may not consider because sometimes things are too close, you don't see them? But another one you mentioned is proximity to your social network and family network. That's one that a lot of us for graduate school, we kind of put it to the side because we need to move countries. But eventually, once you start on your career journey, I think it's the moment to recalibrate, right? So money, proximity to family and friends. Are there any other key ones that for you have been mostly important? You've also mentioned if you're in a couple, of course, that balance is also important. But what would be kind of a scale, the Matteo's scale of important core values that often get misclassified as maybe unimportant or secondary?
I think for me, like, flexibility is one of the top values, and it's been so clear since COVID as well, right? So yeah, I do not like really being on a 9 to 5 job anymore. Back in the days during my PhD and postdocs, I mean, that was something that we never even discussed, like not even challenged, not even discussed.
It's not on
right?
the table.
So, not on the table, right? So you were going to the office, to the lab, do your 9 to 5, many times a bit more than 9 to 5, but you were going back home. I think nowadays that many jobs can be performed remotely or on a hybrid kind of schedule. So, and I think the flexibility side of things, I think for me is really top priority, because it gives me a little bit of time to spend with my family or my partner and things like that. Gives me a little bit more kind of inspiration on my day-to-day work as well. Many times, just going to the office and going to your cubicles and then spend there 8 hours and then get out back home is not something that is extremely inspiring. You miss out on some chats with colleagues and some social aspects there for sure, but I think the flexibility that I get out of that to work, wherever I want, pretty much is just, so much of a value for me right now. And I feel like companies that don't really offer hybrid work schedule are just not something that I guess I can do anymore in my career. So if I were to move to another company, to a pharma company or biotech company in the future, this will be my top priority. Really understand the way they work, the way they collaborate within teams and things like that, as well as understanding the flexibility they offer to employees as well, which is something again that's for me is the same value as salary at the moment. And I think many people that possibly experienced that in the past as well, they would kind of find it relatable as well.
And now, so going back to the interviewing process, because I'm sure that, when you were looking for the position that you now have, you're now attuned to this question of values. And I think one of the traps that we fall into when we get our degree is, because we're going into this unknown space, is to think I need to show how good I am, make this work as fast as possible. So hopefully the first interview will give me my first job. We both know that this is mostly not the case. And, I would posit to you that those first interviews should be informed by, you having done this homework of identifying your core values, but also are part of this exploratory exercise of, okay, do I like this company, this startup? Do I like the culture? Or do I even like this space that I thought I was going to be working in? And maybe I'm going to discover after 2 conversations or 2 job interviews that actually it is not the case. So my question to you is, what part of uncovering your core values is actually fulfilled by the exercise itself of looking for job postings, but then more importantly, talking with people either already in the job interview context, but maybe having informational interviews with people who are in those spaces? Is it something that you have something to share about, maybe from your experience or of people you know?
Yeah, no, I think in the informational interview, side of things, I think that's really important to assess the company culture as well, even before getting to a conversation with a hiring manager or an HR person. I do this. I used to do this quite a bit also back in the days, really trying to understand the way that teams actually work within each other, trying to really identify some red flags and things that I possibly wouldn't like about that prospective company. I think also you can get you can get a sense of the company culture when you're interviewing also for the first time or the second time. I think that the many red flags that you can identify there in terms of work style or the way that employees are treated, the way that work is then put on the table and the way that work is then distributed across different teams and stuff like that. So I think there are many ways that you can get there and really see red flags like coming your way while you're interviewing already. But I think, informational interview is really like kind of a good one, the gold standard, really, to understand if there's anything called wrong with the company you applying for. And what I did also in the past was, and it's pretty easy on LinkedIn, if you put like the filter of former company or stuff like that, you can really see if there's other employees that then left the company that you can connect with, and then you can get like more of a candid kind of feedback rather than current employees that might be a little bit biased towards saying like good things about that specific person, that specific manager, or that specific side of the company or team of the company. So I've been always like doing information interviews, and I'm a little bit surprised, like also that from people that don't do it nowadays. They just apply for a job, and then so if you apply like at my company, I will expect you to kind of reach out to me or someone else to really ask about, how it is to work there. And many times that didn't happen. So I was like, I'm a little bit surprised that this is not still like, the norm moving forward as well, because I feel like it's just such an important step in the job application as well.
This is a great call to action to you who are watching or listening. If you're interested in working with Matteo, talk with him first. So people who are, and I say this again and again, and I wonder, do people get tired of hearing about it? But I'm going to say it again. If someone, a CEO, which a member of a company, is on LinkedIn, they are kind of opening the door for you to say hi and to say, hey, what you do interests me. Can we talk a little bit about it? And Matteo just said it even feels weird to them that you don't do it before applying for a position. So do not hesitate. Just do it. And one of the things that and now that you've been on the hiring side of things, maybe you can confirm this, but we, unless we've been lucky with mentors, etc., during graduate school, we don't come out of graduate school with great self-advocating skills. We have this academic CV that does not work in industry, or maybe in hybrid spaces like yours. Maybe it actually works when the technical part is very important for what you do. But we also come, and I'm generalizing, of course, but depends on each person's experience, but we come with this very ingrained hierarchical frame of mind, and it may keep us from feeling comfortable reaching out to someone who is the CEO of a company or a VP something, whatever, on LinkedIn. And I think Matteo just told you to not worry about that and to reach out. Forget about the whole super hierarchical structure that you came from. Things are much simpler in a certain way. One of the things that I've been saying in the last year is the important exercise when you're interviewing is to not see yourself as a scientist with this kind of virtual bubble with a list of publications behind you. You need to be a human being that's going to be working in a team of other human beings. And so you need to be able to create that rapport with the person interviewing you. And part of it is just chatting with them. I don't know if this is kind of what you were alluding to, Matteo, but I think it's really, really, really important.
Absolutely. Again, it is expected for you to reach out. And again, I find it weird if you don't do it because it actually shows like your genuine interest in the position, and it's a positive thing. Then maybe on your side, it feels like, oh my God, I'm kind of annoying this person, and maybe receives like 2,000 messages like that, but is instead kind of appreciated. And from also a hiring manager perspective, is something that shows interest, and it can, get you like on top of the list just by the fact that, you're reaching out and you're genuinely interested in the position as well.
Thank you again for sharing that, because I think people need encouragement in doing it, and people do feel that they're annoying, potentially. This person who's on LinkedIn and who wears a tie and whatever. And I know you don't. Now, from the hiring point of view, you've mentioned, we get these many CVs and then maybe 3 people come to interview. Of course, we're talking about interview processes that eventually imply inviting people to spend the day, etc. So you're not going to do that for 20 people for sure. But where I'm going is, again, going back to the core values. In your experience, what are great green flags in an application that kind of, when you get that application, you're like, okay, this goes to the short pile. Like, I need to look at this candidate. And how does that connect in your experience to, okay, this person has done some homework, not only about us, and importantly, what you just said, actually chatted with us before, but also this person feels robust in their in their internal work, in their introspective work, in their core value, in how they have kind of ensured that their core values are satisfied with the possibility of working in your company. Does this question make sense to you?
Yeah, no, it does. And I think also, like, just to set the stage, like, on the contrary of what people think, I do not look for like kind of keywords, and I do not kind of use AI tools or things like that. I just go through each CV one by one, believe it or not. But what I want to look like what I want to kind of understand from a CV as well is that, it really depends on the specific role we're looking at. Like, on the example I was mentioning before, like at the beginning of our conversation, it was someone that had a technical background, specifically possibly in a kind of metabolic disease kind of space, as well as having some kind of external facing kind of experience that it will be like pretty like obvious on their CV, right? So once this was the case, I would then select this person and then have a conversation with them. And I think so. It was a little bit, again, a little blend of the technical skills as well as soft skills that possibly was a little bit rare to find, but throughout their experiences on their CV, I could really tell that this person was exposed to some external collaborations or external stakeholders, and they, for instance, had like a nice technical background that was fitting to the position I was looking at. So, of course, like, again, this needs to be like tailored to the job description itself as well. So, like, if you read it through and then you really think that your experience is really applicable to that, try to make it obvious to me that you have that kind of experience that I'm looking at, that specific soft skills that you could gauge from the JD itself, as well as that technical background that I'm sure like is not difficult to show, especially if you have been researching in that specific field. So I think this couple of things that need to be like pretty kind of obvious on that document.
Of course. Now, when there's a job posting, in your experience, is part of what is written on the job posting also kind of giving an inkling to the person reading it of the culture of the company? Is there a way, because you just talked more about on the the skills part, be it technical, soft skills. What about first understanding when reading a job posting that, okay, the way this is written feels to me that it's going to be a place where I'm going to, and of course it's a long shot because you need to talk with the people to know, but the first window into it is the job posting. Is it a culture that I'll be well working in? And second, how do I as a candidate also show there's alignment between my core values and what's being proposed in the job posting? Is this also something that you keep an eye out for, or is it kind of too I don't know, vague, I don't know. I have a word in French, but not in English now to say what it is, but
got the concept. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I don't think first of all, you can really like understand super much about the kind of work culture from a job post, and you just really need to connect to people and really try to understand that, because like each different team can be quite different from others, right? So you could be working very well within a team of a few people. The manager could be amazing and things like that, while other teams maybe can be a little bit less your thing. So I think you just really need to connect to the hiring manager and then other people working within that specific team to really understand the team's culture, and then maybe more like generally speaking the company's culture, if these are fitting with your values as well. But I think also, like during the interview process, I think we all like look out for some if the values of the specific person are really fitting within the team specifically. Like we are, for instance, like not a massive team, like we're 6 people. So it needs to be someone that's, it's kind of fitting with that specific team. Otherwise, you just figure out right away, like being such a small team, right? So you just really want to make sure that they're clicking with us, right? And it's a pleasure to work with them. So I think that's a massively important side of things while interviewing as well, and really trying to understand it. It's always a little bit of a black box, of course, because you can't really understand a person's character in 30 minutes or 1 hour interview. But it's something that we try to assess as best as we can, because it's kind of really important. You just want to work with like genuine people, nice people that really fit within your team as well, right?
And a last question, based again on your experience hiring. One of the things that, again, because we might be going into the space that we don't know, we kind of want it to work the first time. We maybe even go into it thinking, I hope they're going to give me a break. And, we, again, because of this hierarchy, mindset things that we bring from behind. And we may fall in this error or way to act, which is to try to understand what's going to please you as a hiring manager and trying to play that role instead of playing you. Is this something that you have felt as a hiring manager? Okay, this person is just saying what I want to hear. And again, I'm not just asking this for you to put the spotlight on those people, but to kind of look at the right way to do things. And like, let's say if you have someone asks, okay, what sort of schedule would you like? And you want to say flexible, 9 to 5 is not for me, but maybe you're afraid that that's going to block you from getting the job. And then you say, oh, I'm a 9 to 5 person. And then you're going to be unhappy, right? And maybe even your hiring manager spider sense is going to kind of say, this feels like they're just saying this to please. Like it could be, maybe this is going to be the last question, because I think it can be really helpful for people who are thinking, okay, now I'm going into this interview, I have to act perfect and be this kind of character, which is actually not them.
Yeah, don't act. I've been doing this myself also, like interviewing like back in days, and it feels like you just want to please people as much as possible, right? Because you just feel like, well, I really need this role. I really feel like I could be a good fit. I really want to work for them. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I think my suggestion is just being like very genuine when you have this discussion, and really being like straight up with what you think and who you are. And of course, like if you don't have experience, or if in a specific thing, or if you don't like the 9 to 5, that's something that it can be negotiated. And if they feel you're a good fit, that's not going to be a problem, right? So I think, it's better to be as straightforward as possible. Of course, to some extent, right? You're still in an interview process, right? So, I wouldn't really act. I really discourage people to act, because then things become a little bit more complicated than later on, right? So. Yeah, I rather put your cards on the table and really be transparent with it.
Which I think loops really nicely to our message, which is, if you do this work of covering your core values and feeling grounded in them, so you can be in these conversations respecting these core values, but also keeping in mind what you bring to the table in terms of soft skills, technical skills, etc. And also being in this frame of mind of, in a way, of serving. You are there because you want to contribute to this team, which means that you need to be comfortable being clear about your core values and your core needs. And then on the other side, also being clear about what you bring to the table and saying, look, these totally, of course, these are maybe non-negotiable or slightly negotiable to me, but they're kind of, in a certain way, not an obstacle, because I know what I'm bringing, and I hope you can see that too, and that we can all work with this. I think this is the ideal place to be during an interview or in an interview setting, but it does require you doing the work beforehand. You need to know these things about yourself beforehand. So, to finish this conversation, first, I'm going to ask you to share how people can reach out to you, and then maybe an exercise, a technique, just a habit that you can share to help people who are maybe not spending a lot of time during their week doing introspection to start doing it a little bit and start laying the foundations of this very important heritage. It is, well, they bring it from their life, but this very important component of who they are personally and professionally, which is their core values. So first, how people reach out to you, and second, an exercise, a technique, something you can share that's actionable.
Sure. They can reach me on LinkedIn, or they can follow my Substack on Beyond Academia.Get. And in terms of an exercise, I think, we are today's December 16th, so it's really nice to possibly look back at the year and say well, what did I achieve this year? What was something that I liked? How did I get there? And stuff like that, and how 2025 will look like for me. And I think this will set the stage a little bit to what's next in your career, and what's ahead of you in terms of a job search, as well as some kind of a way to clarify also on your value perspective where you wanna go next as well. And I think so it's I guess a very good time to kind of reflect on that and really trying to understand this. I think there are many kind of courses coming out, or things that you can find online also for free to really guide you in that direction and really get you to figure out what's the most important kind of thing I like in my job moving forward. Is it what we were discussing before, is being close to family, is a big salary, or things like that. How do I make sure that I keep this value in my heart moving forward while I apply for jobs? How do I get that during my interviews? And, how do I develop this feeling moving forward as well? So I think that there are many questions that we can ask ourselves, in the job search. And I think there's also many tools out there that we can use to get introspective. And I agree, it's a little bit difficult to ask yourself these questions, right? We're not really well equipped for that as humans, I guess. You don't really sit by yourself and ask yourself really fundamental questions. Or at least that's not the case for me. It's really difficult to get into that, but it's something that it's really, really, really important when you are looking for a next step in your career in your life, to really figure this out in advance, because you just don't want to find yourself in situations in which you then not really fitting in, because you find this out right away on the first day at that new job, right? If you don't really kind of, your values are not aligned with whatever you're doing, it's something that, is not taking you anywhere. So it's definitely something that it's really important to explore ahead of time.
Yeah, thank you, Matteo. And just kind of to loop back to some of what you said before, from our conversation, which is now past 1 hour, and just because there's so much to talk about, and it's so nice to talk with you, I think one of the things, and it's always the main thing to me, talk with the people. You're looking at this company, and Matteo just said it. It's weird that you don't talk with us before sending in your CV. So, but even before talking with the people of the company, which may be a little bit daunting, do what Matteo said is, who can you find on LinkedIn, and you'll find them who worked there and now is somewhere else. Talk to them. And once you start having conversations and being more comfortable having these conversations, these informal interviews, like we said, with people, then instead of just being in this situation that you just mentioned, Matteo, of, okay, I'm sitting in my reading chair and now I need to reflect on my core values. That doesn't work. But in conversation with someone else, and then they'll talk about their lives and maybe talk about how it meshes with their family life, etc. Then you'll have points of departure for your own reflection. So I'd say the main takeaway, talk with the people out there. And the one that surprised me, but I totally agree, talk with the people of the company you're going, with the hiring people for the company you're going into, so they know you as a human before they know you as a piece of paper or a PDF that gets into their inbox. Really, really, really important, and quite simple, actually. It's kind of startlingly, oh my God, I don't know if I said the word right. It's startling how simple it is. But people don't do it for different reasons, shyness, anyway, many different reasons why you feel uncomfortable reaching out to these people. Maybe you feel like, oh, if I'm reaching out, I'm committing. No, you're communicating your interest. One of the outcomes of this conversation may be simply, oh, okay, this is not the company I want to work with, and that's fine. And actually, that's fine for you, because then this person is not going to apply for the position because they know that it doesn't align with their core values. So I would say the main message is, do talk with people, do communicate. Try to, if you're really, really shy, try to do it like once every 2 weeks. Take the time it takes to recharge your batteries, but it's the best, most valuable and simple and like single thing that you can do that can really help you in your job search, in your personal and professional development. If you can, don't just do searches and read documents and things like that. That would be it. Then you shared so many things, Matteo, but this is really the one that has stayed with me. And then don't try to just please whoever's in front of you. No, they will know, because they've been interviewing people for a while, so they'll know. And once they feel that, they're not going to want someone in their team that's not authentic. So again, do the homework of coming with a robust sense of value, of self-value, and then you'll be able to balance that with whichever core values you also want to put forward that might feel like kind of you're putting obstacles or whatever. But today's job market is quite welcoming of flexibility, people even like working from home and even from different continents. So just be sure that if you have like some demands that align with your core values, be sure to balance them with what you bring to the table. That I think would be it. I don't know if you had something to add as a final word, Matteo, but that's what kind of I'm taking home, and I hope people are taking home today.
No, absolutely agree. These are the most important take-home message.
Matteo, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for what you do for the community. Again, the titles of the books, and I'm just going to say the beginning, but it's the Salmon Leap for PhDs is the 2021, and the new one is Beyond Academia. And Matteo Tardelli is going to be easy to find on Amazon. Go and find them, and follow. I don't know, the term is subscribe, I guess, to Matteo's Substack, Beyond Academia PhD.substack.com. Matteo, thank you so much for your second visit and this update on your journey here on Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you for listening to episode 22 of the 6th season of Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD, with me, David Mendes, and my guest, Matteo Tardelli. If you have questions or comments about what we discussed in this episode, you can now bring them directly to me in the brand new Papa PhD community on School.com. Simply go to skool.com/PapaPhD in one word and discover the course material, the weekly live sessions, and all that I share with a community of people like you trying to figure out their professional future after the PhD. See you there.